This week's primary election was marked by some major upsets. Incumbents are often tough to defeat, but several lost their seats to challengers. Others narrowly retained their positions. As Barbara Harrington reports, that could make for another tough battle during the general election.
There were no long lines at Monroe County polling sites this week because there weren't many voters. Election workers spent most of their time reading books as a small number of people trickled in every hour.
I was very interested in the mayoral election in Bloomington, and I also feel like complacency is a problem in the state of Indiana and wanted to do my part.
Turnout didn't even hit the double digits in Monroe County. The county clerk's office reported only 5.5% of eligible voters cast ballots in this week's primary. That made for some extremely close races.
Come on in and have something to eat.
What was expected to be a tight race for Bloomington Mayor Mark Cruzan's seat wasn't as close as many expected. Cruzan isn't seeking re-election, and that left Darrell Neer and John Hamilton to vie for the city's top position. Hamilton won with 58% of the vote after focusing his campaign on preserving Bloomington's character.
I want to thank Darrell Neer and John Lindenmeyer and all the candidates because I deeply believe our party is stronger because of these kind of debates, discussions, competition. It makes us all better. It makes us talk about the city, where we're going.
Councilman Darrell Neer spent the night surrounded by family and friends at Grazie and was disappointed by the loss.
I congratulated him on the win. It was a hard-fought primary, and I was proud to be a part of it. And I let him know that what I told our supporters is that we're all Democrats, and we line up together.
Bloomington's District 4 council race ended up being the biggest nail-biter of the night, with incumbent Dave Rollo winning over Philippa Guthrie by only 85 votes. The debate over how to best control Bloomington's deer population played a large role in the tight race. Rollo voted for a controversial deer kill at Griffey Lake Nature Preserve last year.
It was unavoidable, but I don't think it needs to divide the community, because I think that we can work together to resolve it. I think that everyone's in favor of welfare of both humans and the deer, and so we need to come together and solve that problem.
He admits his narrow victory shows he has some work to do, and not all voters are happy with his decisions. And it appears voters in the city's District 3 weren't too happy with Councilman Marty Speckler. Newcomer Allison Chopra defeated him with 67% of the vote.
There's, not one person in my generation on the city council, and I think someone needs to do it, and I'm willing to do that.
Incumbents were also defeated in mayoral races across the region. Columbus Councilman Jim Linnep beat first-term Mayor Kristen Brown with 64% of the vote in the Republican primary.
Just as happy as we are with the outcome of this election, we need to realize that there are others in our community who supported Mayor Brown and who didn't get the answer they were looking for. Tomorrow, please help our campaign one more time. Reach out to those who voted otherwise. Ask them to continue to be involved. This is their community too, and it needs to work for all of us.
A council member in Martinsville also beat out an incumbent in the mayoral primary. Shannon Cole took the majority of the vote over longtime Mayor Phil Deckard.
I think people were ready for a change. I think they saw an opportunity for some things to go a different direction in Martinsville and move forward, and I think they were just ready.
In the Circle City, where Mayor Greg Ballard is not seeking a third term, former U.S. Attorney Joe Hogsett easily won the Democratic primary and will face off against the Republican primary winner, restaurant owner Chuck Brewer. Indiana University political science professor Marjorie Hershey is here to provide us some additional analysis on how this week's elections fit into larger political trends. As Barbara Harrington mentioned, a lot of the voter turnout was in single digit. Marion County's second lowest turnout, 27 years, with just 7% of registered voters going to the polls. Was that to be expected, though?
Yes, very low turnouts exist in primaries all over the country. First of all, because most other nations don't have primaries. We have to vote twice in order to get elected officials, and when you ask people to do the same job twice, fewer of them are willing to do it in the lesser of the two elections. In addition to that, the problem with turnout in the primary is that although most of us claim to vote for the person and not for the party, that's not accurate. Most of us vote for the party, and that's increasingly true. And there's no difference in party in the primary. They're all Republicans or they're all Democrats, and so that cue that gives us a shortcut to make a decision between the candidates is not present in a primary. And in addition, most other democracies don't require people to register first before voting. We do. And that was what brought the voter turnouts 100 years ago down from about 80% down to about 55 or 60%. So there are a lot of structural reasons why very few people come out and vote in primaries.
In some cities like Bloomington, it tends to be a more democratic area. So would that influence too the amount of people that you think then they would come? Because this past election could be who determines who's mayor of Bloomington.
Yeah, well, in fact, I suspect it did. The trouble is that most of us just aren't that interested in politics. We're not going to take that much time to make the decision, and particularly when the two candidates don't have major differences between them, then it becomes more difficult for people to convince themselves they ought to try to search out the differences that exist.
And then there's all the city and county races too, which are different, and I assume that takes into effect the amount of people who vote too. So thank you very much for being here today.